Oh my God, Jesus. Hold on, girl, hold on. It's a rock python. Oh no. Come on, come on. Easy, girl, hold on. I'm here. Jesus, it's huge. Jesus, got him wrapped up. I'm moving in. Stay back, stay back.
Copy. Keep our eyes on that head.
It's tightening, look at that. Easy, girl, easy.
Snake's hissing, watch yourself.
She's going down. God, it's huge. Oh my God, Jesus. Hold on, girl, hold on. It's a rock python, huge. She's going out. Ranger Unit 2 to base. I've got an adult giraffe down. Python constricting, calf on site. Need assistance and vet team now. Hang in there. Easy now, girl, it's over. You're safe. No more squeeze, alright? Vets are on their way. Just breathe with me. You and your little one, you're safe. No one's gonna hurt you. Just stay with me. Good mom, good job.
The late African sun bleeds across the savannah, casting a deep copper haze over the tall, dry grass that stretches to an endless horizon. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of hot earth and the steady, hypnotic drone of insects that seems to amplify the heat. Inside his dusty 4x4, the leader of the Bravo rescue team feels an unsettling stillness settle over the landscape, a profound silence that weighs more than the crushing humidity of the afternoon. This daily patrol, usually a familiar rhythm of observation and notation, feels different today. There is a palpable tension in the way the light filters through the sparse acacia trees, casting long, sharp shadows that move with a life of their own, like silent predators lurking just beyond the edge of sight. His hand rests on the steering wheel, his knuckles white, as a deep-seated instinct tells him that this quiet is not peace, but a fragile prelude to chaos. He brings the vehicle to a slow roll, his eyes scanning every detail of the terrain he knows so well. The wind, which normally carries the distant calls of wildlife and the rustle of life, is just a whisper against the metal frame of the truck. It feels as if the entire world is holding its breath, waiting. This absence of sound is more alarming than any cry for help could ever be. He sees a herd of impala in the distance, frozen in place, their heads raised and ears swiveling in unison, sensing the same disturbance that prickles his own skin. They are not grazing, they are watching. The leader adjusts his cap, a familiar gesture that does little to ease the knot tightening in his stomach. His years in the bush have taught him that nature rarely falls this silent without a reason, and that reason is almost always rooted in fear. He cuts the engine. The sudden absence of the low rumble is jarring, replaced by a silence so complete it rings in his ears. Now every tiny sound is magnified, the soft creak of the leather seat, the almost imperceptible whisper of his own breathing. He listens, not with his ears, but with his entire body, feeling the vibrations of the earth through the soles of his boots. He is waiting for a sign, a crack in the stillness that will give form to the formless dread that hangs in the air. The sun continues its descent, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and red, and the world outside his window becomes a stark silhouette. The beauty of the sunset is lost on him. For him, it is a countdown, a clock ticking toward an unknown event that has already been set in motion somewhere out there in the vast, waiting expanse. He knows he cannot stay here, a passive observer to a drama he can feel but cannot see. The instinct to act, to move toward the source of this tension is overwhelming. This is not just a job, it is a responsibility etched into his soul. His gaze is fixed on a distant cluster of trees near an old waterhole, a place where the fragile truce of the savannah is often broken. Before he moves forward, take a moment to comment where you're watching this story from. It's incredible to see how far these stories of courage can reach. And if you feel connected to this mission, a simple like and subscribe helps us continue to bring these vital moments to light. With a final deep breath, he opens the door of the truck, stepping out into the oppressive heat, his boots sinking into the red dust as he prepares to face the silence head-on. The sharp crackle of the radio shatters the oppressive silence, a burst of static followed by a voice so strained it is almost unrecognizable. Words are lost in the electronic hiss, but fragments cut through the noise, sharp and clear enough to paint a horrifying picture. The words are stark, primal, giraffe, calf, and then the one that makes the air grow cold despite the heat, python. There is no need for more information. The broken message is a complete narrative of terror. He begins to move, his steps deliberate and measured, a stark contrast to the frantic beat of his own heart. The world around him seems to have drawn in a collective breath, the insects falling silent once more, the wind dying completely. Every rustle of the dry grass under his boots feels like a cannon shot in the stillness, each step taking him deeper into a confrontation that was announced by a ghost on the airwaves. He pushes forward, the terrain a living obstacle. Thorny acacia branches claw at his clothes, and the ground, baked hard by the sun, gives way to soft, treacherous patches of mud as he nears the waterhole. The sun beats down on his neck, a relentless weight that seems to drain the very air of moisture, making each breath a conscious effort. The familiar sounds of the savannah have been completely erased, replaced by an internal rhythm, the thud of his own pulse in his ears, the rasp of his breathing, the soft crunch of earth and dry leaves underfoot. He is utterly alone in this soundscape, a solitary figure moving through a world that has muted itself in anticipation. The silence is no longer passive. It is an active presence, a heavy blanket that smothers everything, amplifying the sense that he is walking toward the epicenter of a profound and terrible event, guided only by a fragment of a warning. He knows he cannot stay here, a passive observer to a drama he can feel but cannot see. The instinct to act, to move toward the source of this tension, is overwhelming. This is not just a job, it is a responsibility etched into his soul. His gaze is fixed on a distant cluster of trees near an old waterhole, a place where the fragile truce of the savannah is often broken. Before he moves forward, take a moment to comment where you're watching this story from. It's incredible to see how far these stories of courage can reach. And if you feel connected to this mission, a simple like and subscribe helps us continue to bring these vital moments to light. With a final deep breath, he opens the door of the truck, stepping out into the oppressive heat, his boots sinking into the red dust as he prepares to face the silence head-on. The sharp crackle of the radio shatters the oppressive silence, a burst of static followed by a voice so strained it is almost unrecognizable. Words are lost in the electronic hiss, but fragments cut through the noise, sharp and clear enough to paint a horrifying picture. The words are stark, primal, giraffe, calf, and then the one that makes the air grow cold despite the heat, python. There is no need for more information. The broken message is a complete narrative of terror. He begins to move, his steps deliberate and measured, a stark contrast to the frantic beat of his own heart. The world around him seems to have drawn in a collective breath, the insects falling silent once more, the wind dying completely. Every rustle of the dry grass under his boots feels like a cannon shot in the stillness, each step taking him deeper into a confrontation that was announced by a ghost on the airwaves. He pushes forward, the terrain a living obstacle. Thorny acacia branches claw at his clothes, and the ground, baked hard by the sun, gives way to soft, treacherous patches of mud as he nears the waterhole. The sun beats down on his neck, a relentless weight that seems to drain the very air of moisture, making each breath a conscious effort. The familiar sounds of the savannah have been completely erased, replaced by an internal rhythm, the thud of his own pulse in his ears, the rasp of his breathing, the soft crunch of earth and dry leaves underfoot. He is utterly alone in this soundscape, a solitary figure moving through a world that has muted itself in anticipation. The silence is no longer passive. It is an active presence, a heavy blanket that smothers everything, amplifying the sense that he is walking toward the epicenter of a profound and terrible event, guided only by a fragment of a warning. A small, solitary track, that of a calf, circles the larger marks in a frantic, helpless orbit. Further on, a patch of grass is flattened and dark, stained with something that catches the fading sunlight with a wet sheen. The air changes, carrying a faint, coppery scent that is unmistakably blood, a primal smell that tightens his gut. Then he hears it, a low, guttural sound that vibrates through the ground itself, a sound of immense effort and pain, a desperate, drawn-out groan that is not a cry for help, but the sound of life being forcibly extinguished. It is a noise that does not belong here, a violation of the natural order that pulls him forward with a terrible magnetic force. He slows his approach, moving from shadow to shadow, his body tense with adrenaline. The sounds are clearer now, a horrifying symphony of struggle, the wet, tearing sound of flesh, the powerful expulsion of air from lungs under immense pressure, and the high, thin bleating of the terrified calf. He pushes aside a final curtain of tall reeds at the water's edge, his eyes taking a moment to adjust to the scene laid bare in the blood-red light of the setting sun. He freezes, his breath catching in his throat. It is not one thing he sees, but a tableau of brutal, primal conflict. A colossal, writhing form, impossibly thick and powerful, is wrapped around another. A long, elegant neck is twisted in the mud. The sight is a living nightmare, a raw and violent sculpture of survival that stops his heart. What he found in that silent, watching amphitheater, nobody was prepared to see. The world crystallizes into a scene of primal violence, a tableau so raw it feels like a physical blow. There, half submerged in the thick, dark mud of the waterhole's edge, is the mother giraffe. Her long, elegant neck is bent at an angle that defies nature, her head resting heavily on the ground. Her immense body is a landscape of struggle, caked in dirt and slick with sweat. Wrapped around her powerful hind legs is the python, a creature of impossible scale, its muscular coils as thick as a tree trunk, tightening with a slow, inexorable rhythm. Its scales, a mosaic of brown and black, catch the dying light, seeming to pulse with a life of their own. Nearby, the calf, small and fragile, circles the unfolding horror, its tiny, desperate bleats swallowed by the immense, waiting silence of the savannah. The sight is a brutal masterpiece of survival, and for a long moment, all he can do is watch, his own breath stolen from his lungs. He feels a cold dread wash over him, a primal fear that rises from deep within. It is not just the sight of the struggle, but the sheer, overwhelming power of the serpent. This is an ancient predator, a force of nature operating with an efficiency honed over millennia. He can see the slow, deliberate squeeze of its muscles, a relentless pressure designed to crush bone and extinguish life. The mother giraffe's eyes, wide and dark, are fixed on him, and in their depths he sees a universe of terror, exhaustion, and a plea so profound it transcends language. His training screams at him to assess the risk, to understand that confronting a reptile of this size is a near-suicidal endeavor for his team. But the sound of the calf's cries, a thin, piercing thread of grief in the heavy air, makes inaction an impossible choice. The setting sun bathes the entire scene in a deep, blood-red light, as if the sky itself is weeping for what is happening below. His mind races, weighing the life of his men against the two lives being slowly erased before him. He raises a hand, a silent command for his team to hold their position, their faces grim masks of disbelief and apprehension. He needs to get closer, to understand the dynamics of the trap. He takes a single, deliberate step forward, his boot sinking into the soft mud with a sucking sound that seems deafeningly loud. The python's head, a flat, diamond-shaped wedge of lethal intent, lifts slightly from its work. Its unblinking eyes, black and devoid of emotion, fix on him. There is no anger or malice in its gaze, only a cold, territorial focus. The air grows thick, charged with a new and immediate danger. The savannah seems to hold its breath, the world narrowing to this small patch of muddy ground where an ancient drama is playing out, and he has just stepped onto the stage. He looks from the cold, indifferent eyes of the snake to the desperate, pleading eyes of the mother. In that silent exchange, the conflict within him resolves into a single, undeniable truth. He cannot walk away. To leave them here would be to leave a piece of his own humanity behind in the mud. He sees a faint tremor run through the giraffe's body, a last defiant flicker of maternal will to live for the small, terrified creature that depends on her. It is all the confirmation he needs. A quiet determination settles over his features, hardening his jaw. He gives a short, sharp nod to his men, a signal that is both an order and an apology for what he is about to ask of them. He takes another step forward, his focus absolute, knowing that he is choosing to confront a living embodiment of nature's brutal power, driven only by a compassion that has now become a command stronger than caution. The world explodes into motion. There is no plan, only instinct and a desperate shared will. The air, already heavy with heat, becomes a suffocating wall of sound. The sharp, guttural hiss of the enraged serpent, the strained grunts of men pushing against an immovable force, and the low, agonized groans from the trapped mother. They shove long, heavy poles under the python's muscular coils, leveraging their weight in a frantic, coordinated rhythm. But it's like trying to move the earth itself. The snake's body is a solid wall of muscle, tightening with a power that seems to mock their efforts. The smell of wet earth and raw fear fills their lungs with every ragged breath, a primal scent that signals a battle against something ancient and unyielding. The python responds not with fear, but with pure territorial fury. It thrashes with a violence that sends arcs of dark water and mud flying through the air, spattering the men's faces and chests. The ground trembles with the force of its movements. One moment, they gain an inch of leverage. The next, a single powerful flex of its body throws them off balance, sending them stumbling backward into the sludge. The poles groan under the strain, threatening to snap. The sun beats down on them, its heat a physical weight on their shoulders, and sweat pours into their eyes, blurring their vision. The calf continues its frantic, high-pitched cries from a safe distance, a heartbreaking soundtrack to a struggle that feels increasingly hopeless. The sheer, overwhelming power of the reptile is a living thing, a force that seems to drain their strength with every passing second. Then the fight turns. The snake, enraged by the persistent assault, shifts its focus from crushing its prey to eliminating the threat. With a speed that seems impossible for a creature of its size, it partially uncoils its lower body and lunges. The flat, diamond-shaped head becomes a blur of motion, striking out not at the giraffe, but at the man closest to its head. Time seems to warp, slowing to a crawl. The man's eyes widen, his body frozen in a moment of pure, undiluted terror, as the serpent's open mouth, a dark cavern of lethal intent, closes the distance. The air is sucked from the world, replaced by a single explosive hiss that promises a swift and final end. His comrades can only watch, their own bodies paralyzed by the sudden, horrifying shift in the confrontation, the poles in their hands now useless. In that sliver of a second before the strike connects, something primal and powerful awakens in the mother giraffe. A final, desperate surge of maternal instinct overrides her pain and exhaustion. With a guttural roar that is more a sound of sheer will than a voice, she kicks out with her free front leg. It is not a graceful or aimed movement, but a convulsive, violent spasm of protective fury. Her heavy hoof connects with the snake's midsection with a solid, wet thud that echoes across the waterhole. The impact sends a visible shockwave through the reptile's body. Its attack is instantly aborted, its head snapping back toward the source of this new, unexpected pain. The strike meant for the man falls short, and the python's attention is now fully, violently diverted back to the animal it had considered all but defeated. That single, desperate act creates the opening they needed. The team leader's voice cuts through the stunned silence, not with words, but with a raw, guttural roar of his own. It is the signal. Fear is burned away by a surge of pure adrenaline. They rally, their exhaustion forgotten, and drive the poles forward with every ounce of strength left in their bodies. Muscles scream in protest, sinews stretch to their breaking point, but they push as one unified force. There is a deep, groaning sound from the snake, a noise of both rage and strain, followed by the wet, tearing sound of its grip finally loosening. The immense pressure on the giraffe's legs begins to give way, the thick coils slackening inch by agonizing inch. As the men heave, their faces contorted in a mask of ultimate effort, their world narrowed to this one final desperate push. And then it is over. The python's massive coils fall away, slumping into the mud with a heavy, wet slap. The men stumble backward, their legs giving out, their chests heaving as they gasp for the thick, humid air. They are utterly spent, their bodies trembling with the violent aftershocks of adrenaline. The snake, its power broken for now, remains a dark, coiled mass in the water, its head low, its movements sluggish. The chaotic symphony of the struggle vanishes, and a profound, ringing silence descends upon the waterhole. There is no hiss, no grunt, no pained groan. The mother giraffe lies perfectly still, her legs finally free, but her body an uneery landscape of stillness. The sun dips below the horizon, casting one last blood-red light over the scene. The air grows heavy with a terrible, unspoken question. Did they win, or were they simply too late? The immediate, violent noise of the struggle is gone, replaced by a silence so profound it seems to have weight. The air, once thick with the scent of fear and exertion, now carries only the smell of wet earth and cooling mud. The massive python, its power momentarily broken, uncoils with a slow, deliberate motion and slips back into the dark, murky water of the undergrowth, disappearing as if it were a shadow that had never been there at all. The men remain where they fell, scattered on the bank, their chests heaving in a desperate, ragged rhythm as their bodies try to process the flood of adrenaline. They are covered in a slick sheen of sweat and dark mud, their faces pale under the fading light. The world around them slowly begins to breathe again. The soft chirping of a distant night bird, a fragile counterpoint to the heavy, exhausted gasps of the survivors left on the shore. The mother giraffe lies on the ground, a mountain of stillness in the twilight. Her immense body is trembling, not with violence, but with the deep, shuddering tremors of shock and utter exhaustion. Her breath comes in deep, rhythmic gasps that are the only sound in the immediate quiet, each one a testament to the life that still flickers within her. After a long, suspended moment, the calf takes a hesitant step forward, its own small body shaking. It cautiously approaches its mother's head, lowering its own to give a trembling, uncertain nuzzle against her skin. It is a pure, instinctual gesture of comfort and connection, a silent question asked in a language of touch. The rescue team keeps its distance, watching in reverent silence, their own aches and pains forgotten as they bear witness to this fragile, private reunion. A cool breeze blows across the waterhole, a gentle relief after the suffocating heat of the fight. The team leader slowly pushes himself to a kneeling position, the mud sucking at his knees. His gaze is fixed on the mother's eye, a large, dark orb that reflects the last purple light of the sky. In its depths, he sees no more panic, only a profound weariness and a quiet, steady awareness that seems to look right through him. There is no clear sign of gratitude, but something deeper, a shared understanding of survival that transcends species. In that moment, he is not a rescuer, and she is not a wild animal. They are two living beings who have stared into the abyss and pulled back from the edge. The world narrows to this single, silent exchange, a communion held in the heavy air between them, tender and exhausting and suspended in time. The sounds of the savannah are a distant hum, the world holding its breath for what will come next. Then, a subtle shift breaks the stillness. The mother's head moves, a small, deliberate turn toward the sound of her calf's soft bleating. It is a movement that seems to require a monumental effort, every muscle straining against the pull of gravity and pain. A low groan escapes her, a sound of pure, unyielding will. Her long, elegant legs begin to bunch beneath her, the muscles trembling violently as she gathers what little strength she has left. The team watches, their own breathing hitched, every one of them silently urging her on. She pushes, her body shaking with the strain, the mud fighting to hold her down. The hope that hangs in the air is as fragile as she is, a delicate thing that could shatter at any moment. The night waits, the stars begin to appear, and everything depends on this one final struggle against the earth itself. With a deep, shuddering groan that seems to pull strength from the very earth, the mother giraffe finds her footing. Her legs, impossibly long and slender, tremble with a violent, uncontrolled shaking, but they hold. She rises, a slow, majestic unfolding against the deep, purple canvas of the twilight sky. For a long moment, she stands perfectly still, a towering silhouette of resilience, her head held high as she draws in the first deep, untroubled breath since the ordeal began. The wind, which had held its breath with the rest of the world, begins to stir again, a soft, cool whisper through the tall grass that feels like a collective sigh of relief from the savannah itself. The calf, which had been watching with a palpable tension, lets out a soft bleat and immediately moves to her side, pressing its small body against her trembling leg, a silent anchor in the vast, quiet landscape. The world has found its balance once more. She lowers her head in a long, graceful arc, a movement of such tenderness it seems to erase the memory of the preceding violence. Her large, rough tongue emerges, and she begins to lick the calf, long, steady strokes that clean the mud and fear from its coat. The gesture is methodical, instinctual, and deeply calming. The little one leans into the touch, its own body finally relaxing, its eyes closing in a moment of pure, unadulterated safety. From a respectful distance, the men watch this quiet ceremony unfold. They are no longer rescuers. They are simply witnesses to a bond that their intervention helped preserve. The last vestiges of the sun's light have faded, and the world is now bathed in the soft, ethereal glow of the rising moon, which casts the reunited pair in a silver light, turning the muddy waterhole into a place of serene, almost sacred significance. Without a backward glance, the mother turns, her movements still stiff but imbued with a renewed sense of purpose. The calf follows so closely, it is almost a part of her shadow. Together, They begin the slow, deliberate walk away from the water's edge, their twin silhouettes melting into the deeper shadows of the acacia trees that line the horizon. The men watch until they are completely gone, swallowed by the vast, breathing darkness of the African night. Only then do they move, their bodies heavy with a bone-deep exhaustion that is both physical and emotional. They make their way back to the truck, the soft squelch of their boots in the mud the only sound in the restored stillness. The engine turns over with a low rumble, a mechanical intrusion into the organic peace of the night, and the headlights cut two perfect white tunnels into the darkness, illuminating the path away from the place where life had so nearly been lost. The drive back to the base is shrouded in a profound, shared silence. No words are exchanged. None are needed. The rhythmic drone of the engine and the gentle bounce of the vehicle over the uneven terrain are the only companions to their thoughts. Each man is locked in his own reflection, the visceral images of the struggle replaying behind his eyes. The leader sits behind the wheel, his hands resting lightly, his knuckles no longer white. He can feel the deep, satisfying ache in his muscles, a physical testament to the effort. But in his mind, there is a quiet, settled calm. The radio, which had earlier crackled with a message of pure terror, is now silent. Outside, the savannah is a world of deep shadows and silver moonlight, at peace once more. The last faint ribbon of the sunset's afterglow on the western horizon is a silent promise. Even after the deepest darkness, life finds its way back to the light. The first light of dawn spills over the horizon, a soft golden wash that dissolves the last of the night's deep shadows. The air is cool and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and the sweet perfume of blooming acacia. At the waterhole, the surface is now a placid mirror, reflecting the pale blue of the morning sky, erasing all traces of the violent struggle that had churned its depths just hours before. The oppressive silence has been replaced by a gentle, rising chorus, the distant call of a fish eagle, the soft cooing of doves, the insistent hum of insects returning to their daily rhythm. The leader of the team stands at the edge, his boots still caked in dry mud, and watches as the world reawakens. He is not listening for a threat, but simply absorbing the profound, unbroken peace that has settled over the land, a peace he and his men had fought to reclaim. His gaze drifts to the ground, where the churned mud is already beginning to harden under the morning sun. The deep impressions of hooves, boots, and the massive weight of the serpent are still visible, a silent, intricate map of the battle. These marks will fade, washed away by the next rain, but the memory of what happened here will remain etched into this place, a story the land itself now holds. For him and his men, it is more than a memory. It is an invisible weight they will carry forward, a new understanding of the thin line that separates life from death in this beautiful, brutal world. He feels the exhaustion in his bones, but it is a clean, honest fatigue, the kind that comes after a purpose has been fulfilled. He understands now that they did not conquer a monster. They simply stood in the way of an ending, allowing for a different beginning to unfold. He lifts his eyes to the vast, open expanse of the savannah stretching out before him, a tapestry of gold and green under the rising sun. Out there, somewhere beyond his sight, a mother and her calf are moving with the herds, their ordeal from the night before already a part of the relentless, forward-moving current of life. The victory was not in the physical act of pushing back a predator, but in the quiet, profound choice to intervene. It was a recognition that every life, no matter how large or small, is an essential thread in the intricate balance of this ecosystem. In that moment, he felt not like a master of this domain, but a humble participant, a temporary guardian whose role was simply to refuse to turn away when the balance was threatened. His gaze drifts to the ground, where the churned mud is already beginning to harden under the morning sun. The deep impressions of hooves, boots, and the massive weight of the serpent are still visible, a silent, intricate map of the battle. These marks will fade, washed away by the next rain. But the memory of what happened here will remain etched into this place, a story the land itself now holds. For him and his men, it is more than a memory. It is an invisible weight they will carry forward, a new understanding of the thin line that separates life from death in this beautiful, brutal world. He feels the exhaustion in his bones, but it is a clean, honest fatigue, the kind that comes after a purpose has been fulfilled. He understands now that they did not conquer a monster. They simply stood in the way of an ending, allowing for a different beginning to unfold. He lifts his eyes to the vast, open expanse of the savannah stretching out before him, a tapestry of gold and green under the rising sun. Out there, somewhere beyond his sight, a mother and her calf are moving with the herds, their ordeal from the night before already a part of the relentless, forward-moving current of life. The victory was not in the physical act of pushing back a predator, but in the quiet, profound choice to intervene. It was a recognition that every life, no matter how large or small, is an essential thread in the intricate balance of this ecosystem. In that moment, he felt not like a master of this domain, but a humble participant, a temporary guardian whose role was simply to refuse to turn away when the balance was threatened. The true reward was not a feeling of power, but of connection to the very pulse of the wild. A gentle breeze rustles the tall grass, and the sound is like the soft, collective exhale from the earth itself. The world is fully awake now, vibrant and humming with an energy that feels both ancient and new. He takes one last look at the tranquil water, then turns and walks back toward the waiting vehicle, his steps slow and deliberate. There is no final dramatic gesture, only the quiet acceptance of a cycle restored. The real legacy of their fight is not found in a story that will be told, but in the silent, continuing presence of two lives that would have been lost. As he drives away, the sounds of the living savannah swell behind him, a symphony of survival that plays on uninterrupted. In nature, you learn that every life saved is a way of reaffirming your own place within it.